Corporal Rohan James, thank you for being on this program.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Curtis.
You know the Jamaica Constabulary Force, which you represent as chairman of the Jamaica Police Federation, has come in for lots of criticism. The head of the force and the Minister of National Security have come in for lots of criticism. As a matter of fact, there was a poll recently which showed that over 90% of the Jamaican public disapproved of the work that both of these gentlemen are doing. I read recently a speech that you gave as you memorialized one of your fallen police officers, and you raised a number of issues. So I want to touch on some of those in our interview today. But here is what I'm going to ask you up front. There is an expectation that the Jamaica Constabulary Force is there to serve and protect the Jamaican public, to reassure the public that it can get the job done. Clearly, there is a deficiency. I'm not casting blame in any direction. I want you to tell me what problems you face in being able to carry out your professional duties to do what you're sworn to do, and that is to protect the Jamaican people.
First and foremost, thank you for having me and for asking me this question. It is no hidden secret that though the government has invested and continues to invest in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, we continue to grapple with insufficiency of resources, so much so that one of my officers who was recently attacked right in the vicinity of the Kingston Central police station, that he was not issued with a ballistic vest. We continue to operate with lack of resources touching on concerning weaponry, as well as ballistic helmets, you name it. It requires a holistic approach for the constabulary force to operate at optimal levels at this time. And I've been urging the government to make that bold step in utilizing the Public Debt Management Act, which speaks to acting in the interest of national security, and for the Minister of Finance to be able to provide those resources. And for good reason. If that is not done, we are working in a minefield as it is currently, where social deviance continues to be at the forefront of our society, and we cannot normalize violent activities and continue to feel comforted by the fact that we are unable to deliver that quality of service. It is very traumatic to many of my colleagues to be visiting these scenes constantly. We are not in a civil war, and all we are simply asking is to provide the resources and also to provide that remuneration and the legislative support so that we can serve the people of Jamaica adequately.
You know, Corporal James, we've been hearing this lamentation for a very long time. We've been hearing this pleading, and there are many who have been asking the government, not just this government, but the current government as well as others, that the police need to be fully resourced in order to carry out their professional duties. You may have seen excerpts from a speech I made several years ago in Montego Bay, where I raised this subject. I realized that as a police officer, you get up in the mornings and put on your uniform, and you leave home with no certainty that you're going to return home, because you're putting yourself at all times in harm's way.
Indeed.
Now, it seems to me that this should not be difficult for a government to prioritize, because crime and security is a major problem in Jamaica. Jamaica has become the murder capital of the entire Latin American region and among the top 3 in the world. There is no civil war going on in Jamaica. There's no reason for so many of our citizens should die of gun violence. And dealing with guns is another major issue. But I have heard the Minister of National Security say that Jamaica doesn't need any help from the diaspora, because he has all the best trained police officers in Jamaica. Yet there is no impact on the crime situation. You are saying that you're under-resourced. You are saying
we are significantly under-resourced, and we are challenged, and we would want all the expertise, assistance, and training to enable our members who I believe that given what we are confronted with at this time, that every single opportunity to enhance our capacity in terms of training, it's very much important at this time and vital to our treating with the humane aspect of a different side to policing in this country. It is required based on the fact that these persons are, from time to time, that we face that continues to exhibit social deviant behaviors and traits, that we are indeed in need of dire assistance to enable and to empower us to confront these elements that we could best ascribe as homegrown terrorists at this time. There is no playing around and there is no skirting around the bush. It is required. Those who don't want to call a spade must understand that there are consequential effects. We have seen for far too long the obliviousness and the naivety playing out, and we cannot continue to normalize criminal activities, corruption, and expect that Jamaica will fulfill its mission and its mandate to achieve a 2030 vision when we are not paying attention to what is crippling our ability to empower every citizen of Jamaica to feel as if equity exists and they have an opportunity to advance their social conditions. Yes, especially since crime has. Yes.
That policing or crime in Jamaica is not just the responsibility of law enforcement. That there are social issues which need to be dealt with. And I understand that. What I want us to do is to concentrate as much as we can on how the capacity of the members of the JCF can be enhanced. I mentioned that there were expertise available within the diaspora, lots of expertise, years of experience, trying new methods, dealing with gangs, dealing with all kinds of crimes. And naturally, members in the diaspora have exposure and use of far greater resources than you have. But there are certain types of training that may be lacking. Why isn't the Minister of National Security or the head of the JCF not reaching out, not accepting the offers within the diaspora? Do you see a problem with that?
As I would have said in the past, I don't know what is detaining the minister nor the commissioner in seeking to access whatever resources are levied to ensure that we are where we are supposed to be. But what I can say is that we are indeed void of critical training. Training can never be too much. It facilitates us thinking outside the box, applying different techniques, solutions, and applications in order to resolve some of these issues. And chief among them would be counterterrorism, gang training, and how to infiltrate. All those techniques are essentially needed at this time for us to really counter what is on the horizon. And for good reason, I would want to confine myself to at least appeal, make the appeal for those who are in the diaspora to start to not shy away from seeking to hold persons accountable, because accountability matters, and where it matters most is that as citizens of this country, we want to see our forefathers' vision materialize. And if we don't seek to hold those at the helm accountable, then we are going to continue to live in a quandary and quagmire. And we want our citizens not to be dying from chronic ailment because of the sort of society that is at a standard where it is unacceptable, unappreciative of what the output of the police is, and continues to play the blame game around the interests of national security. We want to be able to provide that sort of support and security to ensure that every citizen is able at this juncture to live a decent life and fulfilling purpose.
Let me ask you this, Mr. James. It seems to me that the leadership of the government believes that states of national emergency are the answers to the crime situation in Jamaica. We know there are problems with that. We know that this can only be a very short-term solution to staunch the uptick in violence, but this is not a long-term solution. And there is a problem with how the JCF, the members of the JCF, are viewed by the general public. They are not trusted. Over the years, the police officer has not become someone that is seen as a friendly person when you encounter a police officer. I know a police officer has to carry out his or her duty in a professional way. But you know, sometimes doing so in a professional way does not prevent the police officer to smile. There doesn't have to be that hardened look as if I'm speaking to you because I am in a position of authority and therefore I can say anything I want to say to you. Do you find that as a problem within the force?
And that is why I double down on the fact that training can never be too much. I have always expressed the view that continuous training will only assist us in moving from a product of a force envisaged for good to a force for good, and for us to deliver maximum quality service in our disposition. At no time I would ever shy away from exposing the general membership of being exposed to training and development that will enable them to carry out their chores even more efficiently.
Yes. How do you, within the limited resources that you have, and maybe this is a very tough question for you, but do you have any ideas what can be done within the resources that you have to change the public's perception of who a police officer is and the relationship that needs to be developed between the average citizen and the police officer?
One of the things that I would hasten to point out is that the government or employer has to provide that capacity for the police officers to be able to continue to engage the communities. As soon as you are able to apply yourself efficiently within communities, you are transferred. And for good reason, it impacts that productivity and output and relationship. So
I want you to back up right there because you said something which is very important. As soon as you're able to develop a relationship with a community, you're transferred. Why?
And I would love, one of the things that I've always said, I want my officers to be able to serve wherever you are placed.
Right.
But in order for you to be efficient, it simply well means that there needs to be succession planning and preparation, and that you are able to gel with youngsters that are incorporated, and your service within the organization is seen as being valuable in light of your service and experience. And if the organization does not appreciate that, it will naturally dampen the morale and your zeal. And if that is sapped, what it lends itself to is for a jet lag police officer who develops now a mentality of not caring that is naturally going to impact the output and production, and will, in essence, impact relationship between communities and the force. And that is where we need management to handle much better how they seek to elevate, recommend for elevation persons who doesn't know how to harness skills and who doesn't know how to harness human relations, because that in and of itself is an organizational issue that is impacting output.
And we need more training in that area.
And it's apparent that the culture that persons have in saying that we are a paramilitary organization, and consequently you have to be spoken down to and treated substandard. I want to beg to differ, because if you take care of your internal customers, which is their membership, then naturally you don't have to worry about the sort of product output and service that will be rendered to the general public. Because if you are appreciated and valued on the inside, naturally you're going to let everybody who comes in contact with you feel appreciated and valued, irrespective of your color, class, or creed. And that is where I'm hoping that good sense will prevail, and that we will trend in that direction, and that we will open that Pandora box for human relations management, exposure, training, and development.
Okay, that's one area I think we really ought to look at seriously.
The other area that I would love for us to measure in terms of development is how we harness developing and securing evidential values and protect crime scenes, and how we prepare ourselves to present those matters before the court.
I was
I
going to
believe
come to
that
that, Mr. James, but since you've already begun to touch on it,
I believe that
let me
that is
just
what.
let me just have a word on that, because
Yeah.
one of the things, excuse me, that I have seen is that crime scene protection is a problem. I've seen where a crime scene is supposed to be protected, but people are walking all over it, contaminating it. And the investigators who should be called in with the level of professionalism to gather the evidence and do all the forensics take a while to get to the scene. And by the time they get there, lots of the evidence is destroyed one way or the other. So I think that's a major problem, but I'd like for you to address it.
And in light of all this revelation, what it speaks to is that it further is a compounding effect of not having the resources naturally available and having to work with that limited resources and personnel who are certified in the area of collecting forensic evidence on behalf of the organization. And we could do well with an expansion of the cohort of forensic scene, crime scene analysis and technocrats in that area to empower us as well as units to be able to respond in a real time. Where we are now as a force, it is important that we are given that latitude and leverage with the resources. We have never failed, and I will continue to say this as a police officer who has actually served this country now in my 28th year, that it is the state that has failed the people and not the force. I have seen from I was a youngster that the force continues to, and various commissioners continues to grapple with insufficiency of resources. They would have provided a budget and they are given merely a fraction of the budget.
Why aren't they speaking out? Why aren't they speaking out?
And that is why, as the current chairman, I hold no brief for those who may have operated in the past. But the truth must come to light and the lies come to die. We have to put the reality before the people so that we can be enabled by the people and empowered by the people to force those who are elected to discharge their duties, and where they fail, we must make sure that the public is made aware through our public education thrust. And for us to be effective as a force, we cannot continue to condone inefficiency and those who believe that nepotism, cliquism, cronyism is going to work. We have to be practical, we have to be realistic, and we have to be service driven. The force is judged by the fact that you can deliver service or you cannot deliver service. But you cannot say to the people, take comfort because we are trying. That is not sufficient. We must be given the tool and the personnel as well as the remuneration commensurate with the risk associated with the profession to be able to serve the people. I say this against the background that when it touches remuneration, the vision that I share is that the commissioner should not be in a time like this, given the scope of crime, criminality, and murders that are currently taking place, that you are speaking to an added hours which has limitation on the commissioner's capacity to dispatch even the resources at his disposal in a manner in which he would really love to. Is actually tying his hand in getting the job done, because you are confining, instead of giving a salary commensurate to ensuring that the police officer, having left his family at home, he doesn't have to be worrying about what happens behind at home, and it can go out and serve and can be able to be redeployed to other parishes in the need, if the need arises. The commissioner is limited in terms of that. And it is full time that a holistic approach is taken to national security, because I believe that if we operate, if we are given the resources to operate and we remain in these communities, we won't have to have any employment of any knee-jerk reaction of any ZOSO or special operation. That I would say that straight off the bat. Over the years, I believe that the mistakes that successive administration has made is to believe that they can divest national security to private industrial security companies. And that is a big mistake that they have made in the past, which should never have happened. It's an indictment to the people of Jamaica and an affront to the people of Jamaica. And it is time that we stop sugarcoating and behaving as if mistakes were not made in the past. But for us to move forward is to assess the mistakes of the past and to correct them instead of pointing fingers, is to put the solutions that are practicable and applicable on the table. And for us to...
Every company that operates in Jamaica is spending a good portion of their budget on security. Security that normally with a well-resourced and efficient law enforcement community would be providing in the general sense. Certainly, each company for corporate reasons still need some form of private security, but not to the extent that we see it as developed in Jamaica. It's as if if you combine the private security firms, they are perhaps much better equipped and far better resourced, it seems, although there are issues with them as well, than the police force. Now, you mentioned that when the commissioner puts forward a budget or seek certain kinds of programs to enhance the law enforcement community, to make the lives of police officers more tolerable, that he doesn't get what he asked for. Between the Minister of National Security and the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, they cut off lots of things and they reduce the budget that he needs. But we don't hear him complain about it publicly. And nobody can take up that advocacy if they're not hearing it coming from that source. Is it that the police commissioner is so afraid of losing his job that he cannot speak out when things like these occur?
Not holding any brief for the Commissioner of Police. I've heard him spoke about it, that he would love to have had the benefit of the greater part of the resources that he had requested. But as a police federation, we can advocate publicly and in privacy for the limitations that we have observed, the inefficiency that exists, and the lack of resources that has placed not only the lives of our membership at risk, but also the citizens at risk in this country. Mind you that a constable is never off duty, and as it is right now, the government is incapable of arming every single police officer, that when a citizen calls upon him or her, they are able to respond to duties called. And taking in consideration that if a citizen brings an issue to your attention and you have not responded to it in a manner that is befitting, you can also be charged criminally for negligence.
But you're not equipped.
But you are not equipped.
So.
You're not equipped to do so. And I merely will reference the police officer who was attacked at Kingston Central entrance again, to say that having been in the system and is out there in the public, being asked to do traffic enforcement management in the execution of his duties, where he encounters persons whom he has to seize their vehicles, enforce the traffic laws on the books, among other laws. But yes, still he's not given the basic accoutrements for self-preservation. And with that being said, it is redound to either we have an uncaring employer who doesn't underscore the importance of national security, taking in consideration that crime in this country has on a yearly basis prevents the government from earning in excess of $120 billion, for which they could easily have earned and empower the education system, the healthcare system, as well as other critical areas of economic investment, and to be able to grow this country out of the slum that it is in.
I would like to follow up on some of those things, but there are a couple other issues I want to raise with you before we run out of time. One of them is the lack of the use of adequate intelligence in policing. I've seen many instances, for instance, where the police swarm down on a particular place, seize a whole cache of weapons, and nobody arrested. That sends a message to me that there's a lack of intelligence in policing in Jamaica. Because if you know weapons are there, you must also know, through intelligence gathering, who are the people responsible. That's one thing. And maybe you can give a brief comment on that.
We have to continue to sensitize the public as to how advanced our investigations are and what it is that we have done so far to achieve some objectives in many respects. So public education is something critical to what we need to do.
Yes. Another big issue is what is often reported as the level of corruption in the JCF. And that has gotten lots of airplay, lots of airtime. How do you see that as a problem? How widespread it is? And what can your group do to help to change that perception if it is not as widespread as people believe it is? Again, public education, but go ahead.
I can safely say that public perception is worse than the reality, because I can tell you, from my experience, the vast majority of the men and women of the Constabulary Force are dignified humanitarian.
I believe
that be best ascribed as ambassadors.
Yes.
What we do know is that, given the fact that we are from civil society, there are vulnerabilities, and persons don't like for me to say this. There are persons who will not be able to stand up morally and with integrity, given their limited resources that they earn to withstand inducement from corruption. Not many persons will be able to stand up against those sort of enticement. And when you say this and say that there needs to be proper remuneration for police officers, and the fact that you are holding them at a high standard, it is important for you to provide basic amenities for them, so that when they see enticement, they can underscore the oath of office that they took and the professionalism that they are expected to exhibit and the integrity that they are expected to hold large, and to stand up and not to be able to fall prey to those persons who are elite and continues to seek to infiltrate the organization for their own personal endeavors, because at this time, Jamaica requires a force focus with integrity, and for us to be able to encourage and empower those who are falling by the waysides to come on the straight and narrow path, and not to stay in that path where as is the get quick mentality and the wrongdoing lane. We have to pull them over and say, listen, leave the social deviant behavior behind, and let us understand that where we are today, we can be far advanced tomorrow if we apply all the principles that you are using for social deviant behavior in a positive sense.
Yes.
So education is key to us achieving the objective, and all we are simply saying is to make the investment today for a brighter future tomorrow. We get it right at first instance. That is my mantra, and I believe that we have it within us. The political directorate on both sides of the fence need to take a consensual approach and apply the general resources needed in the constabulary force, and to properly remunerate the men and women. You know, in the past, persons will say that it is pure high school dropout who joined the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And that is why many persons have this label about the Constabulary Force, which is a misnomer, because I can tell you, there's absolutely no other working force in Jamaica, whether it be private sector or other entity, that has the amount of qualified persons in the organization as the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
I have no reason to doubt that. So it is not just a question of recruiting high quality individuals, but training, remuneration,
and retention,
providing the necessary support, and so on. The entire orientation within the service of law enforcement officers, reaching out where assistance is available, getting more people on board in support of the JCF, the private sector, the NGOs, the advocacy groups, to help to put your case forward, because at the end of the day, it is the entire society that benefits from a professional force, one that can carry out their responsibilities to protect the Jamaican public, and to do so without any perceptions of impropriety or otherwise. And I just want you to have a final quick word on all that we've said today. What is your last plea to the Jamaican public?
To support your police officers in the execution of trying to protect this nation, and to implore upon the government, our employer, to provide the resources and the remuneration without limitation, so that we can better serve you, the citizenry, so that Jamaica can advance in duty and fellowship, because I am confident that we have the capacity and the will to serve you. We just simply need the resources. In the past, we have been void of being supplied with all the resources necessary to protect you. And if given that opportunity, we have demonstrated, even in recent times, notwithstanding the scourge of crime, criminality, and murders, that we have the capacity to respond admirably. So urge the government to stir response to duty's call, and we will be prepared to stir response to your call.
I will remember that, Mr. James, and you can rest assured that we will make this video and this audio available to all those who wish to watch and listen. And again, I want to thank you for participating on this show, and I want to wish you all the best, and I hope that your advocacy will be picked up by other advocacy groups in Jamaica, by the private sector, who can make a significant contribution to advancing the quality of the JCF. And again, thank you for participating in this interview.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Curtis, and it was my pleasure indeed.
Thank you.
The men and women of the Constabulary Force.
Thank you very much.
Yes,